MPs have voted by 364 to 111 not to hold a public inquiry into grooming gangs in the United Kingdom. And this is an utterly deplorable result coming from Parliament yet again. Now, the people that voted against an inquiry are mostly Labour MPs. And of course, most of these grooming gang incidents happened in areas and towns and cities run by local Labour councils. So it's not surprising that they don't want an inquiry because they don't want some of their own people to be looked into. The Green Party, now half of them also voted against and half of them voted to abstain, and the LibDems all abstained. Now, whether you voted against it or you abstained, this is pretty much cowardice, because the victims of these grooming gangs want an inquiry into this specific issue that happened. Now, in Parliament yesterday, the 111 that voted for an inquiry were all Conservative and Reform MPs. So at this time, they've done the right thing, although they don't always do the right thing, as I've reported on previously on other issues. But on this time, they did the right thing. Now, what a lot of Labour MPs and people who were against this have been saying is two things. Firstly, what is utterly deplorable is what Keir Starmer said, that people who want an inquiry are jumping on a far-right bandwagon. It is not far-right, whatever that is. Can you define it? I don't know how that's defined. But it's not far-right to want an inquiry to stop grooming gangs happening and more victims to be created and have their lives traumatized in this country. That is just normal. People want to stop crime and protect our children and see that they don't get in harm's way. For the Prime Minister to accuse people who want that of being far right is utterly despicable, and he's not fit for the job, obviously. The other thing that people sometimes say is, well, there's already been lots of reports and inquiries, particularly the J report of 2022, which was the biggest one. And it took 7 years and it cost nearly £200 million. The problem with the J report is it looks at child sexual abuse as a whole in the country, but it doesn't specifically look at grooming gangs. In fact, over 7 years, they only spent 2 weeks looking at grooming gangs, and they only interviewed one victim of grooming gangs in the whole 7 years of doing a report into child sexual abuse in the UK. So really it doesn't do hardly anything at all to address the question. It seems like that is to some extent been affected by the same political correctness that affected police and councils and social workers and all kinds of people who could have helped children but didn't because they said it was racist to talk about this particular ethnic group of people. And I'm being careful with my language, obviously, because of the platforms that this video will go out on. So the J report did not do a good job at looking into grooming gangs specifically. And that's what people are talking about now. We need a specific inquiry into this particular type of grooming by this particular ethnic group in this country that is going to look at and uncover all of the people who were complicit, and not just the people who are complicit and aiding it and letting it happen, but the people who are actually doing the crimes that were in positions of power. Because there are hundreds of thousands of victims of this particular type of crime over 40 years, something like that. It's still going on today in towns and cities up and down the country. And it's not enough to say, oh, look, we looked into what was happening in 2000, 2010, and now we've prosecuted people. It does take a long time to bring people to prosecution and justice. But it's no good to say, oh, we've done our job now. We've cleared up what happened in 2010, because it's still going on today. And some of these people who have been prosecuted and charged and actually jailed have been jailed for such a short time that they're out in 2 or 3 years and they're back on the street again. So some of the people who were doing these crimes pre 2010 have been in jail from like 2018 to 2022, and now they're out and they're walking the streets again. But this is not protecting our women and girls like the Labour Party like to go on about. We're protecting women and girls from violence. No, you're not, because you're not interested in dealing with this type of crime, which is heinous, where people in that party have been complicit and involved in positions of power in the towns and cities where this has been going on. Now, the J report gives 20 recommendations, and so you hear people going, oh, there's already 20 recommendations that we should be implementing. Well, you know, a couple of them are good, and particularly the one that says the police should record the ethnicities of the perpetrators in this kind of crime, because then we'll know exactly who is doing it and how many people from each ethnic group, and we'll know the exact extent of the problem, fully. They often record the ethnicities of what they call hate crime if the victim is black or Asian or Jewish or gay or trans, but they don't much or ever, as far as I know, make a full and comprehensive list of the ethnicities and characteristics of the perpetrators of crime, because of course that goes against all of their narratives. The narrative that the police and the powers that be want to create is that people with special characteristics are victims, but people with special characteristics are never perpetrators of anything. They can never be guilty of anything. And that is cultural Marxism, which of course has affected the whole situation with these crimes. People in power saying you can't accuse an ethnicity or an ethnic group of having a higher proportion of involvement in a crime because that's racist, and they don't want to accept that. So, but that would be one good thing that they could do, and they should do, is start to record the characteristics of the perpetrators. So then we'll know exactly what the problem is. But some of the other recommendations are, frankly neutral. They give a bit bureaucracy. They said there should be a children's minister. There should be a new child protection authority. I mean, we just need to know who's doing it so the police can go and arrest these people. Calling them people maybe a little bit too positive, but there we go. And they also, one of the recommendations, actually, to be honest, I'm looking at them, is something that I don't think is good, because it's bringing in another agenda into this. Because whenever this comes up, whenever people start talking about protecting children, they talk about age verification for online services, which sounds good. But this is going to bring in digital ID, and it's all part of the digital ID agenda, to get people controlled, and so you can't just present yourself and it takes away your freedom, because everyone's going to need to verify themselves and be checked every time they do something. So this is something which sounds good for protecting children, but actually it's something that's going to take away our freedom. So we've got to be very, very careful about implementing more digital checks, more age verification, for so on. We just need to catch the perpetrators, put them in prison and deport them at the end of their sentences. Simple. We don't need other things that are going to take away our freedom and make life difficult for the majority of people, because people haven't sorted out the real issue, which is the grooming and the other things that go on. Of course, again, you know what I mean, but I'm being careful with my language. But, the point of this is we need to get rid of the MPs that voted to turn a blind eye to this by saying that there shouldn't be an inquiry into grooming gangs. Labour and the Greens, the LibDems, they have to go. They're part of the Uni Party. And I don't have much sympathy with the fake Conservatives either, because they were in power for 14 years. They didn't do anything about it when they were in power. Um, they support ethnic cleansing in Gaza. They don't care about the kids there. They support the sexualization of children in schools. They don't care about kids there in schools. And now they're saying, well, we care about grooming gangs. Okay, that's fine. But look at the record that they have in the past. They have no consideration or care for children in general. So you've got to question whether this is genuine from the fake Conservatives. But there we go. We need to get rid of the uniparty MPs and put in people who are going to restore our nation. Please look at us in the Heritage Party, because we've been speaking about this for a very long time, and we would make sure that our children are protected from these kind of very, very nasty people.